So let me introduce this month's leader in our webinar on cybersecurity, attorney Peter Berk. Peter is a partner with the law firm of Funkhauser, Vigosin, Liebman and Dunn. Peter has extensive experience in cyber law, technology, and data privacy issues. In his practice, Peter helps clients plan for, prepare for, and hopefully prevent problems that can arise with data privacy and security issues. He has drafted and audited internal and external policies, negotiated contracts that involve data transfer and security both within the United States and internationally, and he's been involved in data breach investigations and responses. Peter prides himself on providing solutions that actually work with the culture, workflow, and processes for each client so that there's better adoption of best practices. Additionally, Peter has made presentations like this on data security to numerous groups and written various alerts and newsletters on the topic, just like the ones that you received in your email today. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Peter to today's webinar. Go ahead and take it away, Peter.
Thanks, Cassie. As I'm pulling up the presentation, if you have questions during the presentation, please feel free to put them in the chat, either to everyone or to Cassie. She'll be keeping an eye on it, and chime in with questions that may be appropriate to the time. There will be time at the end for questions, so feel free to ask them then as well. But I'd rather hear and talk about what is on your mind as we're going through the slides. Just a couple disclosures. I'm not affiliated with Lincoln Financial Advisors. This presentation is not legal advice. There's no attorney-client relationship, but hopefully you'll get some good information out of this. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about data security, both from a business and a individual perspective. We'll talk about some statistics, vectors of attack, how the wrongdoers get in. We'll talk about some common scams and how to spot them, how to protect your business, how to protect yourself, and then what to do when there's a breach, either from a business perspective or the individual perspective. And we'll have some resources at the end that might be useful to have on hand should something go wrong, which hopefully it never does. So let's talk about some statistics about the problem of data breach. According to IBM's report, customer PII is the most often compromised. That's not surprising. 52 of breaches are due to malicious attacks, as opposed to, let's say, insiders or hacktivists. Of the malicious attacks, usually we're talking about stolen or compromised credentials allowing that attack, or technological misconfiguration. And those are the sort of the statistics we see. And what that emphasizes is that there's two sides to protecting yourself and your business. There's the people factor, and that's where you have the stolen or compromised credentials. And there's the technological factor, misconfiguring your cloud, misconfiguring technology that allows easy access for people that want to get in. So just to give it a perspective, the chance of getting struck by lightning is 1 in 960,000. So if you're walking outside, that's your chance of getting hit by lightning. The chance of dating a millionaire is 1 in 220. But the chance of experiencing a data breach is 1 in 4. So it's likely that people on this call either have or will experience or be part of a data breach, whether it's their individual information or their company has information that's lost as they're, in the coming years, if they haven't already. Identity Theft Resource Center provides a lot of statistics and white papers on the subject. When they looked at the cyber attacks and the root causes of compromises, the most are phishing, smishing. Smishing is basically just text phishing, where someone sends a text. They want you to click on a link to import the malicious files. Ransomware was next, and then malware was the third most common root cause of a compromise. They looked at human and system errors, so the technology and the people. You'll see that the failure to configure the cloud or someone clicking on an email or a letter were pretty even in terms of how often they contributed to the compromise. And that's, again, that's the technology and the people. So we're going to focus on those sorts of things a lot during this presentation, because that's really what it comes down to. They're the two weak points that people attack. And even if your technology is up to speed, if the people aren't following the policy, there's going to be a problem. And likewise, if people are doing the right things, but your technology isn't up to date, there's going to be a problem. We're seeing this now, in fact, recently with the oil refinery attack, supply chain attacks, where we're seeing cybercrime attacking supply chains and messing with the infrastructure of our society. And we're seeing that become a bigger and bigger problem. And what they'll do, the way they'll attack the supply chain is they'll go through a smaller, usually less secure company to get into one of their customers that they work for. If you remember a while ago, there was a big breach at Target. The way the evildoers got in was through the HVAC contractor. Put aside why the HVAC contractor had access to the system in the way it did, that's beside the point. They used that less secure contractor to gain access to a larger system of a larger company. And that's where it happens. So it's not just your company being secure, but it's the people and companies you do business with have to be secure. So let's talk about what a breach is. Simply because somebody accesses your system doesn't make it a breach. It's cause for concern. It's a reason to check your system. It's a reason to figure out what can we do better. But a breach under the law has to do with the either compromise, taking, or making it so you are unable to access your data about your customers, data you hold that is personal information, health information, things of that nature. There has to be an actual compromise of it for it to be a breach. For example, under the law, under states' laws, if there's a quote unquote breach, someone takes the data, but it's encrypted and they don't get the key when they take the data, it's not considered a breach because there's actually been no compromise. They can't take and use the data. They have a bunch of ones and zeros that they can't interpret because they don't have the decryption key. So when we talk about breach, we're talking about the actual taking of usable information or someone that came in that made you unable to use your information. That's a breach. So what types of data do people have and where are they located? Well, we have a lot of data. When you think about it, there's some obvious things. Your trade secrets like Coca-Cola's recipe. You have your health information. You have your employee data, and you have your customer data. And one thing people don't think about is how much data you have about your employees. You're going to have direct deposit, possibly if you do your own payroll. You're going to have bank account information about your employees. You're going to have social security numbers about your employees. If you're, depending on how your health plan is set up, you might have protected health information of your employees. So it's not just customers. And the data isn't just where you think it is. Sure, it's on our servers, but it's also on cell phones. If you have the ability to access your company email or company computers, company server through your cell phone, there's a way that that data can reside on that phone and can be obtained by someone hacking the phone. Flash drives, people have flash drives, they use it to port data back and forth. If you drop the flash drive and lose it, you've lost the data. If it's not encrypted, that's potentially a breach. And on our computers, we're increasingly mobile and we're increasingly remote nowadays. And so your personal laptop also has data that can be breached on it, even if you're not connected to your own network. It also can be a vector of attack for people who want to get into your system. If they can attack your personal laptop and you use that to connect to your system, that can create a breach for your company. So let's talk about some vectors of attack. This is one example of an individual attack. It's called, this is part of smishing. It's an SMS message. Some of you may have received these, and a lot of the examples I'm going to give, you may have seen. I'm going to use one that I've received. But this is a common scam where you'll get a text message that your FedEx package is waiting to set delivery preferences or is delayed. And they'll ask you to click to check the tracking, to set preferences, to confirm delivery. And if you click the link, that's when they're going to try to gain your information, either by you inputting it or by downloading a payload of malicious files. And I know I've seen these from FedEx, from UPS, or purportedly from FedEx and UPS for packages. And you got to think, did I order something? Am I expecting something? Email. Email is a very common vector of attack. It costs very little to send out a mass amount of emails with links in them, and they only need so many to return, to click the link to make it worthwhile. And these will be emails where they'll ask you to click a link. That will download the payload, or it'll take you to what appears to be a real website, for example, for Chase Bank or Wells Fargo or FedEx, and ask you to put in certain information: name, address, phone number, if it's Chase or another bank, your bank account, passwords. And that's how they'll gain your information that they can then sell or use to further their attacks. Gmail is a very common vector of attack. And I put this aside from email because what we have with Gmail is a lot of people tend to use their Gmail access, their login and password, as the login and password for numbers of other sites. Think about how many passwords you have, how many times you have to put in your password. Most people either use one password and they use it for everything, or it's a slight variation across the websites because it's hard to remember all of those passwords. Other people write them down, which is also at least safer if it's written down on paper, but a lot of people will put them in their computer. So we have a dilemma. A lot of people end up using the same password. If your Gmail is cracked and they get your Gmail password, your Gmail email and that password will be tried across numerous sites to see if they can use it to get in to other more sensitive areas of your data. And of course, there's the technological vector of attack. If you use certain programs or you visit certain websites, there can be a malicious attack in those programs or through those programs or on those websites. So it's always smart to be aware of the websites you're visiting, the ads you're clicking on, the links you're following, because unless you know what they are, you can't guarantee that it's valid. Businesses. The first attack of business is the person. Ooh, I clicked on something. So basically it's a individual attack, but at your business work, at your business email, at your business computer, where you'll get the email at your business email address. You'll click on the link because they've done something that caused you to do it, and the attack is let loose. Oops, the person screwed up. That's one major vector of attack. We're not seeing a lot of attacks where someone's sitting in a basement, basically trying to brute force open a password. They're using people as the easy mark. And there's technological attacks. They'll use holes in programs or announced problems with existing Office software. For example, Microsoft back in March announced the hafnium problem with Outlook, where there was a hole in Outlook that was being exploited. They quickly sent out a patch for that, but that was a vector of attack through the hole in the software. And that's really the easiest way to get, those are the two easiest ways to get in: people or known holes that they can exploit to put a program in your system or on your website to gain information. So let's look at some common scams and how they work and why they work. So COVID obviously is a big deal right now. And throughout the year, we've seen lots of COVID related emails. And one of the ones that has come around is talking about how the office is preparing, or how we're going to alert people to people getting ill in the office. And the email asked people to click on a link to access and register for a COVID alert system. And when you clicked on it, either it took you to a website where you had to put in certain information that the evildoers then took and had, because you gave it to them. And what they're playing on is the concern people had at that time over COVID-19 and its spread, and whether anyone they had come in contact with had been infected. And so that was playing on emotional response to, oh, yes, I do want to know if someone's been infected and I need to be alerted. Yes, I definitely want to know that. And it plays on an emotion to cause you not to think about what you're actually clicking on. Your company may not have someone that would sign something saying IT help desk. So you have to look at the email and see, is this really correct? Is this real? Here's another one that I've changed a little bit, but it really happened. It's a common scam referred to as a W-2 scam. Someone in HR or in the finance function might get an email purporting to be from the president of the company saying, I need all the W-2s of all the active employees in a PDF file right away. And what they're expecting is the person receiving it is a subordinate and will want to do what the president is asking them to do very quickly. And they're putting urgency. I need a quick review. I need it ASAP right now. Now, in this particular instance, there was a smart employee. Pat said, why do you need all the W-2s? That doesn't make a lot of sense, John. And what Pat didn't realize at the time was that the evildoers had taken over John's email and were intercepting the emails. And so when Pat sent the email, the evildoers sent back, I need it all now for a quick review, upping the urgency, hoping that Pat will just do it because obviously the president needs this information right now and can't talk about it. I just need to get it done. I'm happy to tell you that Pat was a lot smarter. Pat said, John doesn't talk like that. John wouldn't write, I need all now for a quick review. That just doesn't sound right. I'm going to call somebody. And Pat did. And they got in touch with John. John said, I didn't send any sort of email like that. And the W-2s never went out. And they were able to stop the scam and also find the intrusion to the network and get the evildoers out of John's email and out of the network and find out that they protected all their data. No one had access to anything else other than John's email. But it looked real. In fact, it was real. It was coming from his account as best they could tell. So this is a smart employee that caught the scam. This is another one that works a lot. And the reason is because it plays on emotion again. So what this email does is they send you an email with a PDF or a Word document attached that purports to be an invoice, and they start swearing at you. This is too much. I can't agree to pay this bleep. What the bleep are you doing charging me? I didn't have you do any work. Why are you bleeping, sending me a bleeping invoice? And it'll be very, very high stress to the person receiving it, hoping the person will go, what is going on? I need to see what this invoice is. And they'll click on the PDF, on the Word document. And when they do, that's when the malicious files are downloaded to their computer. So again, we're playing on the emotion. We're playing on the need to do something now, to take care of this issue because it's a problem. No one wants to feel that somebody else is mad at them. They want to make them happy. And so they're going to do what they can to make them happy. And the first step in this scam to make them happy is to figure out what invoice did we send them that we shouldn't have. And that's a very common scheme that you'll see go around. And then a lot of these scams will result in what we know as ransomware, where the computer locks, the data locks, and everybody's locked out of their data, or individually you're locked out of your data and your pictures and your contacts and your music, and you can't get in unless you pay a Bitcoin ransom. And you have so many hours to do that. So there's the urgency to get all your data back. And they'll tell you that they can't, that you're not going to be able to solve the encryption quick enough and all your data will be deleted. Depending on your business or your personal situation, that may be of concern. I will tell you that the reputable forensic companies are keeping tabs on the new ransoms that come out, the new encryptions that come out, and usually will have the ability to try to break the encryption depending on how long that encryption signature has been out. They also have other ways, depending on your company's policies, to go back in time, clean your system, and be able to restore your data in a clean form. But that depends on your preparedness and your company's policies in terms of keeping backups and keeping things secure. Just because you have backups, though, doesn't guarantee that you can simply go back a day before to avoid the ransom. Because one, the ransomware was probably on the system when one of those backups was made, and every backup since then. And two, ransoms that come on the system are trying to reach back into the backup tapes and infect them as well, even if they weren't on the system at the time the backup was made. So if your backups are connected to your system somehow, the ransomware will try to reach back into those systems, into those backups, and corrupt them as well. So when you go back a week, 2 weeks, a month, it'll just reinfect. So you have to be very careful dealing with ransomware and how you proceed to restore your system. But at that point, when there is a ransom attack, it's best to hire a reputable forensic IT team as well as legal counsel to help if you have to notify any consumers, employees, customers, or others that their data was compromised. Because this ransomware, although the thieves may not actually have the data, it is considered a compromise and may need to result in a notification to customers and others. IDS, the unemployment scam, has become big recently. I'll just go back. I saw a comment in the chat. Who should we contact to deal with ransomware? There's a number of companies out there that work. I can recommend a few that I've worked with in the past. There's SecureWorks I've worked with, and For Discovery. They're located in Chicago. But there's a number of forensic IT companies, and if your company is hit by ransomware or a breach, your insurer may also have some recommended or approved vendors as well that should be looked at. But it's really good to know who they are and to be prepared to call them should something happen, because the ransomware clock will be ticking or your time to notify will be ticking. And the longer it takes you to get somebody on board to analyze what's going on, the less time you have to actually deal with the problem once they figure out what it is. So really good question. Unemployment scams have become bigger. With the pandemic, the increased unemployment payments, the additional COVID unemployment payments, there's a lot of money to be made by scamming people or scamming the unemployment office. And what has happened is these people have gotten a hold of employee names, social security numbers, addresses, that type of information, and have submitted to the unemployment office a claim for unemployment. And what they're hoping is that no one will notice until the unemployment office sends the debit card, which contains the money. And so a couple ways this scam works. Either they're waiting by the target's house and they see the mail come and they'll try to get the mail before the target and take the debit card out, or they'll, as soon as they file a claim, they'll file a change of address for the person, changing the address to send whatever materials, correspondence, claim forms, confirmation claim forms to a different address. So the debit card and the money go somewhere else, and the person who's the target, who is claimed to be unemployed, doesn't know. And so what they're going to, what the unemployment office have done is they're warning people, be aware of this. If you get correspondence from the unemployment office that you're not expecting, contact the unemployment office. Illinois Department of Employment Security has a separate communication method for this scam because it's so big. They're asking you to call a certain number and to leave a message because they just don't have enough people to track them all down. They will get back to you within a week or two. I can tell you that because someone claimed they were me and claimed they were unemployed. And quickly, I received a communication that I had made a claim, and my firm did as well. And we both said, well, that's strange because I'm still working here. And so we told the unemployment office that the claim was fraudulent. We'll go over some other things individuals should be doing towards the end of the presentation. But these are bigger scams today as the unemployment insurance and unemployment payments go up. Someone in chat noted that they received a debit card and they're not unemployed. If you do receive such a debit card, they're telling you do not use it, do not activate it, let them know, destroy it. You don't want anyone else getting a hold of that. You're not going to be responsible for the debit card if it was fraudulently sent to you by somebody else because you got the mail before they did, or they never changed the address and you got it. But it's safer just to destroy it because it does have information on it that can be used. So be aware of those and be on the lookout either personally for those claim forms or as a company. So how do we protect our businesses? Well, the first step is policies. This is working with the people side of it. Have policies about your technology, how people access the technology. Have a information security plan. Have a breach response plan. Put things in place so that people know what to do to prevent something from going wrong, and they know what to do when something goes wrong. That will save a lot of time and hopefully minimize the impact of any potential breach or problem with data security. But to have these work, there's a couple things you have to do. One, they have to work with the way your company works. I've seen companies that have auto deletes on their emails. After 90 days, emails will delete automatically unless you save them to our document management system, which sounds like a really good policy. But if people don't work that way, if your employees don't work that way, if they like to have their email in the email program and they like to have it accessible without going through the document management program, they're going to find ways around that policy. I can't tell you how many times I found emails on the C drive, on the hard drive, on the personal computer outside of Outlook, or printed out in a drawer. And that's a problem because now we don't know where our data is when we're looking for it. The other thing is to make sure your employees know about the policies. It's great to have one, but if it just goes in a drawer and no one reads it and no one's trained on it, then it's not going to be followed. And 3 years down the road, when something goes wrong and you pull out the policy, gee, we haven't been following this. Someone asks you, well, did you follow your policy? No, we didn't. That's going to be a problem later on, should there be litigation or other problems with authorities or agencies or insurance companies or regulators. So you have to be aware and you have to use them. We always train people about sexual harassment policies and discrimination policies. You probably got, if you're in Illinois, now there has to be mandatory training every year on harassment. And you probably get something from your company every year that says, here's our anti-harassment, anti-discrimination policy, read it, confirm you read it. But we don't do that with our cybersecurity policies, and we really should. Train people, make sure they know what the policies are, make sure they know if there's changes, and make sure they're being followed. The second thing is technology. Have your technology up to date. There's basic things you can do, like a firewall. Make sure stuff coming in should come in. It can protect against malicious attacks. It can keep things out that shouldn't come in. The firewall doesn't do everything because once someone's inside the network, they're inside. The firewall really isn't going to do anything once they're inside. So you can do other things. You can have rules about IP address and block countries. Look, if you know you don't do business with anyone from Vietnam using a Vietnam IP, then you can block Vietnamese IPs, and someone trying to hack in from there is going to get blocked. Is not going to be able to access your system. You can block the IP address from the access to your system. Another good technological protection you can put on. Passwords. Passwords are really good to have, obviously, but we want to make sure people are using the right kinds of passwords. We want them to be strong, and that means using upper and lowercase. That means using non-alphanumeric characters. That means using a number. That means not using something that's your name or your login or password. There's a famous list that goes around every year of the top hacked passwords in the world, in the US, and they have different ways you can slice it. But password 1, 2, 3, 4, password exclamation point are always some of the top ones because people still do that. So you should encourage your employees and yourself to use passwords that are difficult to guess, that are difficult to simply figure out easily. And we'll talk about a few ways you can do that coming up. Is it safe to use the autofill password feature? And so let me answer this question in two ways. If you're talking about the autofill where the website or program creates a password for you, usually those are okay. They're creating a very strong password that's a bunch of random numbers, letters, and non-alphanumeric characters. If you're talking about the autofill where you're saving the password to your computer or to keychain, that can be a little more concerning, because if someone gets access to that cache of information, they have all your passwords. We'll talk in a little bit about some programs you can use that actually do have that are password keepers that are very well put together and require you to have one really good password for the vault, and it will autofill your passwords, which it has created as random character strings for each website. And we'll talk about those in a little bit. Training I mentioned once, I'm going to mention it again. It is of the utmost importance that the employees and you as an individual know what you should be doing. And we all think of training. Training should be where someone stands in front and talks to you about the policies, says, here's what you do, and everybody participates. And that's what it always looks like, right? With somebody smiling, everybody raising their hand and being engaged. But we all know that in business training, that's really what it looks like if you do it that way. So one way to train, obviously, is to tell people what the policies are, but there's an even better way to train. And that's by experience. There are companies out there that you can hire that will help you test your employees. And if they fail, they will be required to go through a training course online to recognize suspicious emails and things. There's a company called NoB4, the number 4 at the end, that does that. And there's a host of other companies out there that will do it. But the experiential side of it, where someone actually sees the email, clicks on it, and realizes they've clicked on something bad and gets trained on what they should have noticed, can be a much more effective training, at least for the person protection side of things. And insurance. Insurance is obviously something we all look at for many different things. Cybersecurity is no different. There are many policies out there, but you have to look at what kind of policy you want and what you need. It should cover the direct expenses of a breach, what you have to do to remediate, what you have to do to notify people. It should cover indirect expenses, things you may have to change in your system or things you may have to do outside the data breach context to comply with law or to protect your system going forward. It should protect you against liability from judgments and from penalties from credit card companies and things of that nature. And you also want to look to see if it protects you against cyber crime, people using data to do criminal activities on behalf of yourself or your company. Those are 4 things. Not every policy covers all 4, but those are the things you need to look at and consider. What is my policy covering? And does it provide enough protection for my business? And once you have those things in place, the people, the technology, the training, the insurance, you got a pretty good defense line. But it's only as good as its upkeep. These guys are obviously well-trained people. They look like it. But if they sat around all day drinking beer for a year, they wouldn't look the same. Same with your policy. You have to audit it. You have to make sure it's still current. If you change your technology, chances are your policies have to change a bit. Chances are your training has to change a bit. Your cyber insurance may have to change. And in fact, your premium may go down depending on what you do. There's insurance companies that have incentives to do certain things to your systems. If you do them, it will bring your premium down, which is a nice monetary benefit. So let's talk about protecting yourself. You have to protect your credentials. We saw that in the statistics. Some of the biggest breaches occur because somebody lost credentials and somebody got in. And so first is using passphrases versus passwords. A passphrase is something that is a sentence. someone did one that was very motivating for them. They wanted to stop smoking, so their password, they had to reset after 90 days, but for 3 months, they typed their password, I will stop smoking. And they had zeros and exclamation points in there, but it was a phrase. It wasn't just smoking. Passphrases, because they have more characters, they become more complex potentially. Password managers. These are the things I talked about with the autofill feature. You can have a password manager. There's 3 listed here that will basically create and store those random alphanumeric and non-alphanumeric passwords in a vault for you. You will have to come up with one really strong password that you can remember to basically open the system, so that when you go to the website, when you go to your bank account, it auto-fills that 40 random character password into the password field for you. You never have to remember the 40 character password that it came up with. It has it, and it's stored securely with your password. Those I do recommend using, because now you can have a different password for every website, for every login, that's complex, that's very hard to crack, that is protected, and that you can still access without having to write them all down. The other tip for credential protection is don't share your credentials. Don't have somebody else log in as you. It can be dangerous because they can remember it. They might write it down. It might fall into the wrong hands, or you might have them log in from a different computer. That computer may store that password and that login. And then if that computer gets hacked, your password has been compromised. And a lot of policies that you'll agree to when you sign up for services say that if any login under your login and password is considered your action and you're responsible for it. So don't share your passwords. Don't share your logins with others that aren't needing them. They should have their own if they need to get in. And that way you protect them from falling into the wrong hands. So how else do you protect yourself? Well, how do we protect ourselves from scams? Well, there's a few tips for looking at the email. So be vigilant when you get an email that looks a little funny. First thing to do is smell test the email. Does this really seem right? Is there something off about it? When I read it, does it make sense? Does it sound like the person? Overall, is this something I would get from this person? Second, look at the domain name that it's either asking you to link to or where it's coming from, and look really carefully at it. If it's coming from Microsoft and you look at the email address, it might say, sales at microsoftonline.acmefraudsters.com. Well, it said Microsoft. And if you stop there, you think it's Microsoft. But if you go on, you understand, no, it doesn't look like Microsoft's email. Microsoft stuff will come from Microsoft.com or maybe Microsoft.us. Chase Bank, other financial institutions, PayPal, should come from normal domains. One thing that we're seeing is if companies have words that end in W or have W's in them, like law firms. So our website is fvldlaw.com. What the fraudsters are doing is they're changing the law, LAW, to LAVV. And when you read it quickly in lowercase, it looks like a W. It's just a little elongated if you pay attention. So look at those domains very carefully. Third, use your browser, not a click. If there's an important email, important information for your bank account, for your company, it will be in your account if you log in through a browser. So if Chase is asking you to click here and put in your password, don't do it. Go to chase.com, log into your account. If there's important information there, it will be there. It won't only be accessible through the click. And that way you haven't clicked a link that's either going to download malicious files or take you to a normal looking website that's actually a cover for someone trying to gain your information. And fourth, if you're really not sure, use outside confirmation. Pick up the phone. Hey, Bill, did you just send me a picture? Walk down to your coworker's office. Hey, did you just send me something? Because I wasn't expecting this from you. Look kind of odd. And confirm. Yeah, I did. It's okay to open it. No, I didn't. Don't touch that. I don't know what that is. So 4 really good things to do. And protect your credentials. Never hurts to say it again. So let's take a little quiz. This looks like a normal email that I would have gotten from a partner of mine. But it's not. And how do we know? What are some things that are tipping us off? Well, there's a few things in this one that would tip me off that it's not real. One, his email does not match the email it's coming from. Mr. Groff's email would never be A. Heddens 550. I don't know what that has to do with him. If it looks like it's coming from him in my company, why is it a Gmail account? Smell tested. Does the person sound this way? Was this something they would write? I don't think he writes that way. He would write differently. But if I was still unsure, I would pick up the phone and I would call Jim and say, "Hey, Jim, I got this email from you. Is it real?" Now, they've tried to take care of this because they've said, "Can't talk right now, so just reply here." Well, then I'd find a different way to confirm. I would talk to Jim's assistant, or I would walk down and see if he was in his office with the door open. And I would say, "Hey, Jim, did you send me an email saying you couldn't talk?" And figure it out. This is a common one you'll get from Amazon. "Oh, I got a $100 gift card present. How awesome! I can buy all the stuff at Amazon I want." Well, something wrong here. It doesn't seem right. It's a gift, so I wouldn't be expecting it. But what's wrong with the email? Well, it's smell tested. There's no to or from listed in the to or from, where you would see it's to me from my friend Joe, who sent me a gift card for my birthday. And I didn't expect it. No, it's not my birthday. I'm not expecting a gift for any reason. And the other thing I would do is I would use a browser. I wouldn't click. I would go to Amazon, go to my account, and I would see if I had a gift card there. And it should give you an ability to find the gift card without using the click. PayPal verifications are very common scams. If you look at it closely, you can figure out whether this is real or not and protect yourself. So how do we know? Well, let's check the domain name and address. This is coming from PayPal, but the email address listed is marchesio@omnimicrosoft.com. That doesn't sound like PayPal to me. And the other problem is asking me to click. Well, I'm not sure. So I'm going to go to browser. I'm going to go to PayPal. I'm going to log into my account and do whatever verification they need. Because if they truly are concerned about fraud on my account and need me to verify something, they're going to have something in my account when I log in telling me, "Hey, we need to do a verification. We need to figure out whether what's going on in your account is you or not." They're not just going to rely on an email and me clicking on it. So that's a person, and that's how you spot emails. Now, let's say this all fails. The technology fails, the people fail, you fail, and there is a breach. Let's talk about what we do in the case of a response. If you're a business, the first thing you do is hopefully you have the plans, you put the policies in place, you put a response plan in place, put them in action. You should be ready to go. The right people get notified, the team comes together, and you start down the path of figuring out what happened, what was lost, and what we have to do about it. Second, notify your insurer. That's what you bought insurance for. Contact the insurer, notify them of the potential claim so you don't lose any rights. And they may have resources that you can use and that are approved for payment by the insurer to help you through the breach response. Third, get professionals involved, whether through the insurer or otherwise. Your plan should lay out who you need to contact professionally. It should include IT people, legal professionals, PR professionals potentially, financial professionals potentially, and your insurance agent. And that team should come together. And those are outside professionals. You definitely should involve your internal IT and your internal people, but having external IT that can be sort of a unbiased analyzer of the situation, it can be a benefit in terms of protecting the integrity of the investigation. Also, IT companies that you hire for forensic analysis of breaches are doing specifically that. They've trained and they've focused their business on those issues. So they're going to go through a very methodical process that's defensible, both in insurance and in front of agencies and regulators and in front of litigation. There's a question in the chat I just saw, and I'm sorry for looking up. That's where my other screen is. Some companies have special email addresses that you can forward questionable messages to. Do you see problems with doing this? Yes and no. It depends on the email. So I don't like it because it propagates the email, the potentially malicious email in the system. However, if you have a dedicated help desk IT resource where you can forward it to them by attaching it, and they will sandbox check it for you to make sure it's valid, I don't necessarily have a problem with that, but that should go along with other spam filters and malicious email filters that you have in place. So I do like it, but if it's done correctly. If it's just forward emails to people to see if they're real, you're potentially propagating the email in your sent items in their inbox in a deleted folder if they delete it. So you have to be really careful how that's handled. And then in your breach response, once you assemble your team, you put your plans in action, you notify the insurer. Now you focus on what do we have to do? You figure out what happened, what did we lose, and what are our legal responsibilities and notification responsibilities at this point. If we didn't lose anything, great. There's no notification responsibilities. But do we still have legal responsibilities for downtime or other issues? If we did lose something, okay, what did we lose? Who do we have to notify? The consumers? Do we have to know attorneys general? Do we have to notify regulators? And usually these notification periods are very, very quick, 30 days from discovery of the breach, which means if IT discovers a breach and they sit on it for 7 days, now we only have 23 days left to report. And if they take 3 more days to tell the CEO, to get the legal professionals involved, to get the response team together, now you're down under 20 days to figure out what happened, figure out what was lost, put everything in place, and get your notifications out. And while that may seem like over 2 weeks, pretty good, it can go very, very fast. Now, let's say you're an individual and your data gets taken or your computer gets compromised and your information that's there is stolen. What should you do? Or you become a victim of an unemployment scam. First thing to do is look at your credit reports. Everybody's entitled to a free credit report every year. I would look at your credit report and see, are there accounts on there that have been opened that I didn't open? Are there credit cards on there? Are there debts on there? Are there things there that are incorrect, that are an error, or that just look like they were fraudulently put on there? And get those changed. Contact the companies and get them changed. Change your passwords. If you've been compromised, that means your password could have been compromised. Passwords to bank accounts, to Gmail, to other places you have data. Change those passwords. Go find a password manager to help you change those passwords to something much stronger. Third, notify law enforcement. You don't have to call the FBI or the CIA or anyone or things like that, but you should call your local police and say, hey, my identity was stolen. Here's how I know. And they'll open a report and they'll give you a report number. This helps with insurance claims and can help if something goes wrong and you get blamed for something that somebody else did with your identity. You have a police report showing that you reported your identity stolen as of a certain date. And it can help just keep track of it. And if something does happen in your area where a lot of people are reporting it, it can escalate and it can you may be able to find out who did it. And then be vigilant. Once you've been hacked, once your data is out there, it's out there. And so be vigilant about your credit reports, about strange letters you might get from credit companies, from other scams that might come in, because once the target is hit, more fraudsters will realize this is a viable target and they'll come after that same target to see if they can get data as well. So be vigilant not only with your finances and your credit history and your life in the real world, but be vigilant about your life online as well. And some resources that are really good to have. For business, insurance companies are great resources. Not only to have insurance, but they have recommendations and audit programs and tools that can be used to test your system and check it and make sure you're keeping up with best practices. Trade organizations the same way. If your company is in a sector that has a trade organization, those trade organizations will put forth best practices, recommendations, and have vendors that will present and provide information on what you can do specific to your industry and data that your industry keeps, how you can keep that safe. And then there's the National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST, and they have frameworks for cybersecurity and other information about keeping your company data safe. You'll hear people talk about the NIST framework. That's what it's referring to. For individuals, the Federal Trade Commission has really good resources, and they have a reporting form. You can report identity theft to the Federal Trade Commission. They keep a record of it, and they'll keep emailing you about things you should be doing as long as you keep updating your file about what's going on and what you're learning about the identity theft. State attorneys general have resources. The Illinois Attorney General is no different. I've given you the website. They have resources to report identity theft and things you can do to help mitigate the effects of it. Annual credit reports. There's a website, annualcreditreport.com, that can help you get your annual credit report. But you can go through them, or you can go through each of the three credit reporting agencies: Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. Go to their websites, and you can order your free credit report once a year. And you get to download it free, and you can print it out and look through it. And they have ways you can contest what's on there. And then fraud alerts and credit freezes. Now, these are two different things. A fraud alert just puts on your credit report there's been fraud or potential fraud with your identity. And so the person extending credit to someone claiming to be you should go through some extra checks to make sure it's you. And there might be a two-factor authentication or a text or a call to you to confirm. Credit freeze is a little different. It freezes your credit, and no credit can be extended to you while the credit freeze is on. You actually have to go lift it to allow credit to be extended. So you put a credit freeze on and you go try to buy a car, you won't be able to buy a car. You'll have to go back to the credit company, lift the freeze, and then you can get the credit. But those are two very, very good tools. Obviously, if you've been the victim of a breach and you've been offered credit monitoring, fraud monitoring, those sorts of things, take advantage of those things that are offered to you for free for a period of time. Most breaches that involve credit card numbers will offer that. And it's a good, it gives you a little peace of mind to have that on there. And with that, those are the basics. If there's any questions, I know I've tried to hit the questions in the chat. I see a couple extras. Let's see what these are. Is a trash can on a laptop vulnerable? What about files deleted from a trash can? Where deleted files, emails go? Is a file on a desktop vulnerable? Anything on a desktop, laptop is vulnerable if someone gets into it. So if someone hacked into my laptop, they could get to all my active files, and they could get into my recycle bin, my trash can. Now, if I delete a file out of the trash can, so I delete, double delete, it'll go into space, slack space. It'll be still on the disk and will stay there until it's overwritten. So it may be obtainable, but it's a lot more complex to get it when it's not in the trash can or in an active file, when it's sitting and waiting to be overwritten. The longer time goes by, it gets overwritten by things, pieces of it may still be there. You hear about that in e-discovery a lot when people talk about slack space and file fragments. That's basically the files that are marked for deletion that are off the active register but are waiting to be overwritten. If someone hacks my Gmail, might they be able to hack my bank accounts if I do not store any bank passwords in my computer? Yes, they could. Obviously, if your Gmail password is the same as your bank password, that would be the problem. But if you don't store the passwords on your computer, they might still be able to get it if they use the Gmail infiltration to also put malicious files on your computer and are able to track keystrokes. They could do it that way, but it's less likely. So yes, if you don't store the passwords on your computer in the saved keychain, it's less likely they will be able to hack the bank password just by having access to your Gmail. But that's why we recommend a password manager that has a very strong password to get into it. And then it stores those unique 40 random character passwords in its own system to be used when you log into a website rather than stored on keychain or stored in the computer. I agree, it's very convenient to store it on a computer, but it can be risky as well. Any other questions? And this is not a speak now or forever hold your peace. In the slides, you have my contact information. If you'd like to reach out, you come up with a question in the middle of the night that's bugging you, feel free to drop me an email and I'll try to respond as quickly as I can. But hopefully you got something out of this. Hopefully it helps you help yourself, help your business, help your friends, stay a little safer when you're online.
This was wonderful. Thank you so much, Peter, for this information. I learned a couple of new words: Slack space, sandbox check, and NIST, where new words I can now add to my vocabulary. Also, one of my bigger takeaways is password phrases. So thank you for that. I have used LastPass before. For those of you that haven't used something like that, what I really like about it is that it works on my computer and my phone. So it does work on both of those, and it works on iPads as well. So thank you so much, Peter. For those of you that are still around, we've got a couple of webinars coming up. Our next webinar is June 8th at 2 p.m. We've got a group called the Senior Living Experts coming to speak about what to look for and what to avoid when looking for a senior living home for yourself or a loved one. That is going to be on June 8th, 2 p.m. And then we've got our 6th annual halftime events. This is going to be another virtual event, similar to the one that we did earlier this year. That's going to be on July 15th at 7 p.m. So please mark your calendars for that. Peter, again, thank you so much for the information. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I'll stick around here if anyone has any last minute questions. Otherwise, have a great rest of your week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cassie.
Thank you.
Bye, Jack and Carol.
Thank you.
Cassie, what was the name of the app you use to store your passwords again?
LastPass.
John, did you have a
Last
problem?
or blast?
Last.
I had my gallbladder out.
LAST.
That was kind of a surprise. And then I had some eye
Last
surgery.
pass.
That was
Okay.
planned. So
All right,
it's just
thank you.
it's hard to get no.
My pleasure.
Hell, I had my gallbladder out 16 years ago, so I beat you.
I don't know why they put pieces in if you don't need it.
Dennis, always the competitor.
That's
Always
right.
the competitor.
Absolutely.